Is ADHD genetic, or is it caused by society? The short answer is that we have evidence that it is genetic. The DRD4 gene, specifically DRD47, is one, along with, quote, several other genetic markers that are equally promising in determining that, close quote, that ADHD is genetic. So, like, case closed, right? Except, wait, what's the next chapter? Are we training our children to have ADHD? It could be that intense amounts of screen time and the incredibly stimulating digital world that we have created for ourselves is contributing to an increase in the rates of ADHD. So which is it? Is it genetic, or is it caused by society? First off, I'm not a medical expert, so be suspicious of everything that I say. Here are some of my sources. I read these 5 books in the last couple months about ADHD. I specifically have a master's degree in bioethics. That means I'm a kind of philosopher that listens to medical experts as a way to make ethical and philosophical decisions. So the question of whether or not something is caused by society or it is genetic is something I have some specific expertise in. In fact, I first read the concept of race as a social construct, and it promises I'll connect it to ADHD, in this book, Race After Technology by Dr. Ruha Benjamin, and I was like, no, that's BS. There's no way that that's true. Genetics, DRD4-7 gene, that's the thing that's doing the causation, not the world. So I stubbornly set this book aside and then ended up reading this book, which finally pushed me over the edge, with 2 citations that I'll give you right now. First off, though, are there things that are just caused by society? They're just in the world and they're not based in genetics. Yes, there is an example that comes from this book, The Broken Heart of America by Walter Johnson, where he discusses that there was radioactive experimentation that was being done in black neighborhoods in North City, St. Louis. That radiation, strontium-19 or whatever it was embedded so much in the world that it was showing up more in the teeth of babies that grew up in those neighborhoods. Pause to let that sink in. There were higher levels of radioactivity in children's teeth in black neighborhoods in St. Louis. The baby tooth study, commissioned by Washington University. You can look it up. That is an example of a thing that is just socially caused. It has no genetic basis whatsoever. But where things get a little more hairy is when we start looking at things that appear to be genetic because they appear to be biological-ish. Example. Asthma, for instance, appears to be something that is internal to the body, and yet asthma rates are higher in black neighborhoods. Is that because black people genetically have a predisposition to asthma? Or is it because of environmental racism and being exposed to more toxins? I've totally forgot about ADHD, ironically. I promise I'll get back to it. Another example was the baby birth weight, the fetal birth weight study that Dr. Dorothy Roberts discusses, that black babies in this country are born at a lower statistical birth weight than white babies in this country. That on the outset can appear like a genetic difference, but it is, in fact, on further scrutiny, if you read this book and take extreme notes, it is an example of social stresses showing up in the world. So asthma rates, the birth weight of babies, life expectancy of people in telomeric aging, as well as the levels of radioactivity exposure in babies' freaking teeth lead to the evidence, the social construction of race. Specifically, what I mean by that is that the world is showing up in the biology. I say all of this to blur the lines between genetics and the world. To get back to the original premise, is ADHD genetic or is it caused by society? Part of what the problem with that question is that implicit in it is that if it were genetic, it would be real. And if it were caused by society, it would be fake, somehow less invalid, an excuse. This is the wrong way to think. It can be caused by society and real, and it can be genetic, caused by the RDR4 gene or other genes, and also real. And if you're taking notes, there's one logical option that I kind of left off the table, and that is, if society can affect biology, can society fundamentally change DNA? Well, we know that it can change epigenetics, epigenomes. I've talked about this before. But the short answer is yes, there are darker mechanisms than epigenetics that show up in the DNA. If you want to read more about it specifically, the author, Dorothy Roberts, actually wrote, I don't want to explain it all in this video because I've said enough dark things in this video. The author, Dorothy Roberts, this book, The 1619 Project, is so, everybody talks about it, nobody fucking reads it. Chapter 2 on the social construction of race is in fact by Dorothy Roberts. So you can just read that chapter. It's much darker though, and I don't want to end this TikTok on like an extremely dark note. I wrote a sassy ending in my conclusion, and it was like, so when your uncle at Thanksgiving is saying like, well, ADHD isn't really real, are they just like blathering about with their uninformed intuitions, or do they cite their sources? So yes, ADHD is genetically real, and it is valid, and also it is socially constructed and real and also valid. That's all. I'm Charlie. Join our Patreon if you're still here, or buy any of these books on my reading list in my affiliate links, or send me money on Cash App and Venmo, because okay, bye.